opportunity. We will do this in a tag team effort. I'll kind of tee it up, and then my colleague Andy is actually going to go into the details of our Phase 2 watershed implementation plan. I think Jeff teed it off with a key question, and it's a question we get constantly as staff and folks out there working with real people in Pennsylvania. The question is, why are we doing this? And that question, the further north you go in the basin, the more difficult it is oftentimes for us to address to the public. Why are we doing this? We're miles and miles away from the Chesapeake Bay. And I think Jeff gave a good answer from a legal perspective. Yes, there's a TMDL which was established, and we have to recognize that Pennsylvania does not have any bay impaired waters. There's 92 TMDLs in Maryland and Virginia, and really the driver for us is the Maryland Water Quality Standards. But that's not oftentimes a good dialogue to have with real people when you get into the legal mumbo jumbo of the Clean Water Act and stuff. The reality is for us is we have to turn this on why it's important and why this local efforts are important for local reasons. And our Phase 2 WIP is driven on that fact. And it's really a continuation. And in order to understand where we're going, you have to understand where we were. We rolled out a tributary strategy within Pennsylvania a number of years ago, 2005, I believe, and it took, we had a lot of public consternation and pushback, rightfully so, because where we failed at that point in time was to properly engage the public to become the key driver in this process, and we learned our lessons. A few sticks across the head and some hearings and such, you change the course of action. So our first phase of this watershed implementation plan became a public-driven process, and we continue that. We have probably had more meetings with the public across the basin than the other states collectively, arguably, of course. And we felt that was important because it comes back to that question, why are we doing this? And that question of why has to change based on where you're at in the watershed. So building what we need to do, one, and this is what Andy will go into, we're building on the past efforts of this first phase of our watershed implementation plan and taking it down to a real people level. Again, it has to be pragmatic. One of the big things for us was our point source strategy, basically our allocations for our wastewater treatment plants. And we established those back in 2006, 7, 8 time frame. And I want to be clear, because a lot of folks look at us and say, John, are you guys going to change what you're doing with treatment plants? We will hold firm to what we committed to with our partners in that industry on those MPDS permits, and we'll continue to use that as a baseline. That doesn't change. And I think that elevates the comfort with many of the partners that have helped put that together. The other end is the reality of the geography for Pennsylvania. We are looking at a massive watershed. For example, we have 40,000 to 50,000 farms within the basin. So a one-size-fits-all doesn't work for us. The driver for this second local effort has to look at what we are doing and what we are doing well. And that becomes the building block of this WIP. So what are we doing well? Let's go county to county. In Lancaster County, we are doing a great job on agricultural outreach to the Lancaster County Conservation District. Lancaster County has established a clean water consortium made up of business interest, of municipal interest, of agricultural interest, of local government interest. That becomes a driver. We embrace that and make this part of our Phase 2 watershed implementation plan. An example of how you need to do things in Lancaster County. York County, one of the areas that EPA had identified as a shortcoming for Pennsylvania is our stormwater efforts. We have a potential backstop TMDL, where that means that if we don't do what the federal government wants us to do, the federal government will do it for us. So we've suddenly elevated what we need to do on stormwater. York County Planning Commission has an outstanding Act 167 plan, which is tied into a local total maximum daily load. We're going to embrace that effort and look at what their experience is to help us move forward in the second phase. Lycoming County. Lycoming County took our trading program and used it as a mechanism to build a coalition between their municipal and their agricultural interests. We will take that, embrace it, make it part of this second phase WIP. You can see what we're doing. We're trying to make the local geography meet what we need to do. And sometimes you go, when you're talking at that level versus the federal level, you lose sight of how important that is. It's not just about feeding a model for us. It's not just about how many permits we turn out, but it's about real people making real progress for their issues. You can see the theme here that we're trying to do. That was the basis of phase 1. That'll be the basis of the phase 2. Jeff said this has to be an adaptive management approach, and if anything is conducive to what we need to do in Pennsylvania, it's adaptive management. Our dynamic is changing every day, and we have to recognize that. So some of the things we may commit to, as I stand here today, do 5 years from now may not work, or we may find new technologies. One of the cornerstones is this manure to energy type of technology and how that builds into trading and getting that moving across the board and across the nation to help us get reductions. And last, before I turn it over to Andy, and sometimes I think that something we fail in government and we fail in these processes is learning how to celebrate successes. We oftentimes in these processes focus on what's not happening. What we've tried to do in making this a public-driven watershed implementation plan is to recognize what people are doing right. That's how you build success. That's how you build people wanting to do more. It's not telling you what they're not doing. I'm a coach, and you know me. It's always, this is what you did right, this is what you can do better, this is how good you are. That's how we have to build this second phase, and this is how we have to move to 2017 to 2025, and that's how we can make things work. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Andy, who's going to go into the details of our plan.